Good morning to some of you and good evening. And welcome to our Heartfulness Wellness webinar for today. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very new and I am a volunteer with the Heartfulness Center. So a bit of myself is that I've been working in the community service work for quite a while. So I always concerned about what is happening in the community, in the world, especially towards the elderly and also family for women, and how can we integrate work and life together. So today we are very honored to invite Deepa and Milind. They are all working in India, and they are the business leaders. They have their own business. So if you want to check out about them, you can find them in LinkedIn. And so I just want to welcome them for this webinar. I just want to introduce what is Heartfulness. So Heartfulness is a way of living, and from the heart and by the heart. So the Heartfulness Institute is a global non-profit offering simple contemplative practices for balanced living and holistic wellness. So the Heartfulness practices are rooted in Raja Yoga and backed by science, currently offered across 130 countries, all on a free of cost basis. So I'm one of them that benefit from it, which I just started only last year. So I really love it, and welcome you all to join in this Heartfulness with us. So let's not waste much time. We shall welcome Deepa and Milind to introduce themselves. And please, Deepa.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Christina.
In fact, we know Snehal ma'am for many years. And the reason why we met her in the first place was 14 years ago when my father suffered a stroke, and he was 70 years old in the pink of health. He was living alone. My mother had passed on years before, and my sister married. She was expecting her in the 9th month, a very precious baby. And I was on tour, I was traveling, and my father, we had a ritual of speaking every morning, and at 7:30 when I would place a call, and I was surprised that he didn't answer the phone. We tried for my sister and I spoke, and I said, this is very unlike him. And then I even imagined maybe he has misplaced his phone, because we had all the week before, we were all together on a holiday in Goa, where we had gone with my friends, our friends. Milind and I were there. We spent some very special time with my father at that time, driving, and he took us to some places that he loved. So, and he worked, that was his second career after being with the Times of India. He was the vice president of the National Union of Seafarers. He would travel a lot. He was also slated to travel to South Africa at that time. And he had been at sea. He had traveled to many countries just after school. And always someone who, my parents, both of them, they were also, our grandparents lived with us when I was about 11, because my mother didn't keep good health, and my grandfather, my mother's father, suffered a heart attack. So it was my father's idea to say, both of us live in small homes. Why don't we just, sell those small homes? I'll take the money that you get from your sale, and I will buy a 2-bedroom home. You can have 1 bedroom, and in time I will return all your money. So at the age of 11, and because I was living with my grandfather and grandmother, because my mother was a working woman, the little time, the few 4-5 years when I lived without my grandparents, was a time that I didn't particularly enjoy. I was a latchkey kid. I would come home, and the value of having grandparents was really imprinted in my mind as an 11-year-old child, when my parents announced that our grandparents were going to live with us. And I remember, so yesterday was my grandmother's 28th death anniversary, 15th of May, and I wrote this little story. And I have written many stories on my grandparents, primarily as inspiration for the younger children in our family. My sister's child, who is only 14, and she has not met all the people from previous generations. And one of the things that I do as a hobby is writing these people's stories. And through these stories, I use this as a medium to talk about their achievements, talk about their what they did, because the person that you see today physically, mentally looks incapacitated. But what was it like when they were little kids? What were their accomplishments? What were their parents like? So I have chronicled all of these and I share them because I believe this inspiration is very, very necessary, especially when in these times, stories nourish the soul, they sustain the soul, they give us hope. And when Snail ma'am told me, what is it that you want to talk about? And I said, you know, it's not about me. I'd like us to do this with my teammate because I'd never be able to do all the things that I'm doing without my business partner and my life partner of 32 years. And I said, we need to do this together because talking about elders is something which is a decision that we make as a couple. I can't decide to bring my father after his stroke to come and live with me. I need the support of my husband. I need everybody to pitch in because it's going to be a new person in the home who is infirm and who needs all the care and attention. So that's when Snehal ma'am and I met, when we were putting together a whole plan, a mind map of how is it that we are going to integrate my father post stroke and give him a life which was vital, which was going to allow him to come back to his full force in whatever form, in his new normal of a paralytic, of someone who doesn't speak.
So, in fact, this about integration of life of elderly has always been a very core value that we have promoted from early on. During our early careers, we were posted in Jamaica for a couple of years, and my siblings were in the US. They had already moved on, and my father had a heart attack at that time, and we decided that this is the time that we need to go back, and we made a very conscious choice of going back with our children because we remembered, for us, the value of interdependence came up very, very strongly. When you say interdependence, I never had the luxury of growing up with my grandparent, but we realized that it's important for grandchildren to have grandparents and grandparents to have grandchildren. It gives them hope, it gives them life, it is an inspiration for them. So we wrapped up everything and we came back to India to be around with my parents so that our children have the benefit of growing up with grandparents. So, the whole value of interdependence of people and not looking at people as liabilities or burdens, or there is a value and there is a need for respect of these people who have spent their life bringing us up and so they are contributing to society.
Yes, I agree with you actually, Milind. Very, very well shared, because I feel that when I was growing up time, I also remember that I have my grandparents. I
Yeah.
have my mother's side and my father's side. And you are absolutely right. And I think perhaps maybe this is the lacking part these years, whereby they don't have the grandparents, don't have the stories, don't have the hope. And I really like what Deepa is doing by writing stories to
Yes.
share with children and to make it a medium for those who don't have grandparents. It's really inspiring. Yes. So
Thank
what's your plan on implementing, like, as family support? What you shared is very good. And what is your thoughts on what can they do to have this, intact for them, like balance it as a wholeness? Can you share with us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. Um, I think, Christina, like you said, growing up, you must have seen that we shared meals, we sat at the table, we told stories, we swapped accounts of what we had done in the day. One of the things that Milind and I did, our goal as parents early on was to raise happy kids. And that was a very simple goal. It was not about their academic achievements. It was not about marks. It was not about competing. We always saw that that was going to be an outcome. What they needed to experience was a sense of stability, solidity, peace, harmony, and growing up feeling very secure and being accepted as for who they were. So we made a very conscious decision when we were getting married that if we had any disagreements or fights, we would not do it in front of the children because children can feel very insecure. And there's a reason for this. When we were in Jamaica, Mumbai was, this was in the year 1993. Rahul was just a year old, our son. And he had started talking, and those were the years of the Mumbai riots. And I remember Milind and I sitting down in the drawing room in our home in Kingston, speaking in a very impassioned voice. So he's noticed our expression. We looked very worried, and we were speaking very passionately. And he came to me and he said, "Mama, are you upset with me?" He was very little. He was maybe just two, "Are you upset with me? Have I done something wrong? Are you upset with Baba?" And that his anxiety immediately made me feel that, no, we have to be composed. And we said, no, we reassured him and we said, no, we are not upset with you. We are not upset with each other. And we noticed that this was a small input that we received as parents to be vigilant. So here we were not even angry with each other. We were talking about a situation in an impassioned way, and that was that was enough to make Rahul feel nervous. The second instance that I want to tell you, Christina, is when we were in Jamaica. My mother-in-law and her friend visited when I was expecting Ria, our second child, and Rahul was 3.5. And just before that, I think when Rahul was 2, my father and my sister had visited. And my father-in-law visited on one trip. So in those 3 years of being in Jamaica, we had these 3 visits by elders where he met all of these people. And of the times that we were there, we noticed that that little boy was possibly happiest when these people were around
yeah,
and visiting. And that again gave us a clue, Christina, on, like Milind said, when my father-in-law suffered a heart attack, it was just the beginning of the second contractual, we had just renewed we had actually just reached Jamaica. And there was no way we were able to come back. And my brother-in-law is a doctor. He and his wife are doctors in America. They are very successful. And thankfully they were there, and they could give my brother-in-law could, create like, I think he wasn't married at that time, but his being a doctor did so much for them in terms of, getting the right access, being able to get the best medical care. And my father-in-law, touch wood, I mean, next month he turns 89. He's vital. In fact, we just did an interview with him that's on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. He's a nuclear physicist. He's the first health physicist in India who has his life work. And for us, we made a decision. In fact, when we came back, he was visiting and he said, "Deepa, Milind, why don't you consider coming back to India? Deepa wants to do Lumiere. She can work at home, work from home." And, I had already set up a company in Jamaica called Lumiere Consultancy Services. Ria was going to be born, and I said, why not? I mean, this way, Sandeep, my brother-in-law, and Anju, they had planned to move to America. And my father-in-law and my mother-in-law were in India. My father was living by himself. My sister was not yet married. And we said, hey, why don't we are there so far away. And yeah, I mean, let's just decide to come back to India. Let's not renew our contract. And both of us had good jobs. We were doing well. All of our friends at that time were going to America. They all thought we were making the biggest blunder in giving our kids suboptimal education, because we were not going to the US where, you go there for the best education and the kids can have a great future. And we were like doing this reverse migration of coming back to at the time when, but we were coming with hope in our heart and with family in our heart. And we were just taking this big, what we thought, leap of faith. And I remember we wrote this jointly, this letter to our respective families of what is our vision for our life and for our kids, and how we envision a future where we are all included together. And that's really what we did. We're just living our vision. And today our world is so global. We have family, of in so many nationalities. I have a Japanese sister-in-law. I have an American sister-in-law. We have cousins who have, French in the family. We have a nephew whose wife is Taiwanese. It's a global family that we have. And in Sanskrit, we have a term, Vasudevam Kutumbakam. The whole world is my family. And Milind and I were thinking, we've always done a lot of community work for grandparents. So at Lumiere, which is the company we have, and in the neighborhood we live, there are lots of kids who are overseas and their parents live here. And we've tried to include them. And that's a word like inclusiveness, inspiration I've touched upon, interdependence we talked about.
One of the things that we have observed is the amount of contribution elders make to our growth. So, and they really don't need sympathy, they need inclusion. It is about inclusion. Yeah. And so, and in a company, so what we do is in our community, whenever there is a function, we ask the elders, we request them, can you cook? We motivate them, and bring them over to the office and make them participate, because many of their children they're abroad. So, and we see that, we find that, the moment you give them inclusion, you find they are healthier, they are smarter, they are living their life fully, and they are very well integrated into society. So, this is some of the observations that we have over the past few years.
Yes, I'm very keen and interested to find out that I think you have a set of like the 5 I's that you mentioned. Can you repeat the 5 I's, that how you implement it into your life in this holistic system for support?
Okay. The first we talked about several times on inclusiveness and, mealtime conversations. My father lives with us, and my in-laws are like just, we have 2 homes, which are about 250 meters apart. Food is cooked in one home. It goes to both homes. And presently, in the times of COVID, my daughter is with her grandparents in our other house, which is where we lived initially in the first several years of our work. And then we bought another house because my father needed more room. And that's when we bought this house, which was really going to be the place he was going to be in. But we figured very early on, and my in-laws were at that point in time living by themselves. They were younger, they were living in Sion. And we moved to the new house that we bought, which was really for my father's recovery. And we thought we would have an office on one level, but things changed. And the other house where we lived earlier, my father and his helper got locked out on the first day of the pilot project of, teaching him to live by himself, because he was very keen to live by himself. And we said, okay, we'll give him the sense that he's living by himself in his house, and we'll have an office over here. So we'll keep coming, and he won't think that, he won't be alone by himself. So we'll kind of keep using this as the premises for work. And that will be the main house where, the living will happen and the working will happen here. But things happened the other way. Life had other plans. My mother-in-law fell very sick 12 years ago, and she is 83. She is a Parkinson's patient, and she also has dementia, early dementia. And we rehabilitated her in the other house, which was the office, which had in planning, we had just planned for it for future for them. But the very first year after it got made, my mother-in-law fell very, very sick with tuberculosis, meningitis. And we had to bring her here, and we rehabilitated her.
Yeah. And when you look at inclusion, now example, her my father-in-law, he's not able to speak because he lost his speech during his paralytic stroke. We make sure that we include him in our breakfast table conversations. We have conversation. We ask him questions. He's not able to speak, but he can certainly phonate and express himself. And we have learned to understand. And he knows that communication needn't just be about speech. So recently we started including teaching him how to draw with his left hand. He's a right-handed person, but he lost his right hand functionality. So nowadays he started sketching, and so communication and inclusiveness plays a very big role in heartfulness and healthfulness, if I may say so. My mother, she doesn't understand at times what we speak. We go and have a conversation. We share with her what has been our day, what is it that we have done. It's a feeling of being wanted, the inclusion, and that really keeps them going. That's a very powerful thing.
So inclusiveness, the second I is inspiration, Christina. Inspiration because, we have to inspire each other. Stories inspire. I collect stories. I share stories. I've started telling stories now in a video format. So we got my father-in-law and we did a Learning Monday event with him, which is there on YouTube. Please go and watch it. So this is his life and times, and we are doing a chronicling of these stories through this platform because younger people today may not read so much. So I've always thought, instead of writing a book, maybe getting them to tell stories, and that narrative in their voice is possibly more impactful. And that's what we've started doing, which is inspiration.
The third I, we would say, is really innovation. Innovation, because we are all humans. And as age catches up, there are certain things we may not be able to do. And the feeling of failure is not the best feeling that anybody would like to live with. So we need to be very innovative to make it a winning proposition for the elders, right? And not go into situations where they will fail.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's at that age they may not have the comprehension to accept a failure. So how do you create situation? And that's where a lot of innovation is required. To be very creative, innovative, to create, making sure that you do not have situations where they will fail or they will see themselves as failures. Examples could be, my father-in-law cannot sign with his right hand. Obviously, we can't take him to the bank to sign. So we need to create a situation where he doesn't need to go to the bank. Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is, even for him, he's always been a people's person, right? So we knew that for him to, staying alive is not the point. How do you get these elders to thrive? And our full agenda, whether it was with my mother-in-law, my people in the community, we've got like aunts and uncles, and life expectancy in the families have been very high. Recently, a grand aunt, my father-in-law's aunt, turned 100, and we had a celebration for her in the native place. And innovativeness and creativity is so important. It's the lifeblood. We have an uncle, you give them purpose, and you kind of keep the mind active, and whether it's games, whether it's activities they like to do, whether it's craft, whether it's puzzles, it's conversation, it's cooking, it could be anything, but integrating them and finding innovative ways in which you can engage them is something that we do. So we have a very dear friend who's in the neighborhood, and when my daughter was very little when we came back, they were like grandparents, because my in-laws weren't around, my father was still working, and one day they offered that, can we take Ria at this time to our place, so that will give you time to get ready and it'll allow you to do a little bit of cooking. And I thought that was such a kind thing to do. I mean, they didn't have grandchildren of their own. They were living by themselves. Their children were abroad in America, and they were still vital. And auntie and uncle, Dr. Chandramoleshwar and his wife, Kalpakam Chandramoleshwar, they took Ria and they would play with her. And I knew she would be safe. And it would allow me that little respite of just connecting with myself, which I never got as a, yeah. And that's again interdependence. And
this is interdependence.
Yeah, and so what we are also doing, Christina, is pay it forward.
Yeah.
Today, Kapu auntie is 82 years old. Yeah, we can't forget what she has done for us. She has a son in Singapore, her daughter is in America. And what is it that we can do to just carry that forward? And look, we've kind of made it generational. Meera, Dr. Chandramoleshwar's granddaughter, is in Singapore. She's a student in the US, and she's interning with us at Lumiere. And look at how the whole cycle continues, you know, and it's so beautiful because she knows, she may not know all of the stories about her grandparents that I can tell her. And her brother Mihir. And you know, stories keep our humanity. They kind of break these barriers. And if we are going to be in these times when we talk of social distancing is not about human distancing. It is not about shunning people. It's really about coming closer in the heart, right? It may be physical, spatial distancing, but you know, love and heart is beyond space and time. And you know, if the moment we kind of understand that, you know, ageism is all, it all begins in the home. Yeah, if we can sort of create or demonstrate that people bring value, even a person who's an invalid, who cannot speak, who cannot, you know, can inspire. I remember Dr. Ramchandra Krishnan, my father's physiotherapist. He would come, and if we met him outside, he would say, you know, Mrs. Samant, he told me, Deepa, Mr. Samant gives me more energy and more inspiration than I give him as my patient.
And that's why I like to come.
He says, as his physiotherapist, I'm taking away more energy than I'm giving him. His physiotherapist and my father put together a little salsa dance, and they invited both of us home one day, and they said, please sit. We are going to give you a surprise. And we were saying, okay, what is there? What is the surprise? And the physiotherapist and my father, because my father has always been a great dancer, so he's paralyzed now, but the physiotherapist knew, and because we had already told her, see, what we've done, Christina, is also we've stayed in touch with all of their friends. My mother-in-law's dementia. So, you know, we create parties and we invite them over, we hear them to talk about stories. So my father's school friends, his college friends, his work friends, we've done Zoom calls. There's also a community of people who love music. So we've also created them through Lumiere, where we put the entire event on Zoom. And all these senior citizens today are enjoying that musical event. We've sort of transitioned that entire physical event that these people used to go to for the last 11 years.
Look forward to, you know.
This was a monthly event that they were looking forward to. And suddenly we realized that these people won't do the event if we intervene. So we intervened, we spoke with the organizers, and we just moved that event before. So they didn't even have a break. So as soon as the lockdown happened, we moved that entire event, and 85 senior citizens joined that event online.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So it's innovation, isn't it? It's innovation.
Yes.
And the last but not the least is integrity. I think integrity, Christina, what I mean by that is even in elder care, you know, today we talk about this whole concept called age tech, which has started in America, where you have senior communities, we've got people living by themselves. And I think, you know, one of the things, because integrity is such a big Lumiere value, the reason I talk about it is even for our help and all the support staff, we might have cameras and we can have technology, but the human integrity of doing what is right when nobody's looking. So what is that caregiver? Because when both of us are away, we might be traveling to Singapore where we have our office. What happens to all our elders who are being supported by the helpers? See, they are going to do exactly what they see. We have to teach them to walk the talk. They know exactly how we look after them. It's not as if, you know, just because we are not there, their clothes have to be cleaned and ironed, the food has to be warmed and heated, and the medicines have to be given just so. So you have to pass that chain of integrity of doing what's right, Christina, when no one is looking. And that's really when enduring values come in. and why it's important in humanity, for us as a humanity, as people who are afflicted by this virus, that where the enemy is on the outside, why we need to come together more than ever to
Mm.
protect these values. And our elders have been very close to human values. Our youngsters have grown up with a lot of technology, and this is the time to kind of
Bridge,
reconnect, to bridge. And we're never going to get so much time under one roof together as we're going to get now. So tell stories to each other. We have to, each generation has to listen to the other, to observe, to listen without judgment.
So this, we advise a school here, a tertiary school, a university institution
Mm-hmm.
close by, and one of the beautiful concepts which is thriving is really about in the ground floor, the first floor, and the second floor are the
Yes.
student hostels, young children's hostel, and the top two floors are the elder homes.
Elderly home for
So,
the elderly.
they really get to interact with,
And they all eat together.
they all eat together in the
So,
same dining place.
so these children boarders are eating with the elderly who are living in the home for
So they
aged
are like their grandparents.
together.
So,
So
it's a
it's,
beautiful community.
so
It is
what,
not an old age home which is
no.
isolated.
So we call it the grand exchange.
Yeah.
The grandchild and the grandparents, when they exchange, it's what you get really is a grand exchange.
It's a beautiful concept which they have done, and that place is really thriving. The elders are enjoying, they're not isolated, the youngers get to hear the stories. It's a very well integrated community.
Yes, I think that is very, very wonderful and beautiful, because I think in Singapore, they are also trying to implement such a concept and an idea. It was really very difficult. And I feel that what you shared about the 5 I's on inclusiveness and inspiration, innovation, the fourth one is interdependence, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the fifth one is the integrity. I very concerned, especially when you mention about like when you're away, and having integrity is so important. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So I do have come up with an idea, is that because there's so much challenge out there, whatever you shared, I really resonate with you. And because I know that now we are living in a society, everybody is wanted to have the next best things, or want to achieve a lot of stuff. Somehow, sometimes we actually forgotten that we have to take care of our family first.
Yeah.
So when I know that during the time when you, both of you, when you know each other and you all got married, and I'm sure starting as a family is something new, how did you actually manage it as in terms of relationship, conversation, and then how do you make that conscious, mindset to actually live this life now? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a very good question.
Yeah.
You want to take it, or should I take it? Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, Christina, for me, a lot of things have been, very intentional. So I like to plan things, and I'm a very natural learner, and I'm always looking to see what is it that I can learn. So from books, and I like to do these experiments for myself. So even when I was very little, I would watch the human dynamics in the family, and I knew and I had made this long list of what my mother is like, and what are her values, what are her attributes, what are the and I had a tick and a cross. A tick was what I thought was a good value, and a cross was what I didn't think I liked very much. So for example, my mother would often feel very sad and very quiet. She would also get she would also get offended quite easily. She was very touchy, very, very sensitive. Then with my father was very gregarious. He loved people. He was always very positive, very optimistic. But my mother was a perfectionist. My mother did things very exactly. My mother was very studious. My father was much more on the outdoors. So why I'm telling you this is, as a child, very intentionally, I wanted to know what are the things I'm going to learn from everybody. And I realized with my grandparents, when I was much more closer to my grandmother than I was my grandfather. Because as a child, I didn't really understand my grandfather very much. It was only later when I went through his work, and as a much older person, I saw and I learned to love him. And today I love him in a way I didn't love him as a 17-year-old who lost her grandfather at that time. And for me, it was very important that I will not judge on appearances. I will know the whole person, and I will not be hasty in judging. And everybody is a story, and everybody has something that we can learn from. And that early lesson, Christina, has been, and there was another mistake that I made, and I must tell you, uh, till maybe about 15 years ago, I thought we were doing this very big thing of coming back to India to be there for our parents. And it was, there was a time when I had this very big difference. It was a fight with my father-in-law because the neighbor was complaining about the dogs. We had two dogs, and I was visiting my father's place with my little children. And I got a call early in the morning at 7 o'clock, and he said, uh, the neighbors have been complaining because the dogs have been barking all night. It was the first time I was leaving the house, and Milind was traveling. So the dogs were very noisy, and my father-in-law was very angry, and he said, you know what, we can't have two dogs in the house. One of the dogs has to be sent away. And I remember, because I'm a dog lover, I got very upset. And I said, how can you say that? I mean, I'll leave this house and go. You can't let my dogs go. So we had that difference. It was the one time. And he said, yes, if you want to go, you can go. And Dr. Chandramalleshwar and his wife coincidentally were visiting at that time. And they said, no, Deepa, calm down. It's okay. And I calmed down. And I said to him, we came back to India for you. And he said, no, you came back to India for yourself. And I remember I said, what an ungrateful man. I mean, I've put away my career and I've come back. And then after some years, Christina, I said, no, he's right. We came back for us. We came back because we wanted the children to grow up with grandparents. Here I was and my ego saying, I came back from him, but that's nonsense. We came back entirely because we wanted the children to learn and imbibe their values.
So these are experiences and reflection. So need to sit back and reflect on your action, behaviors, and the way what you are going to be doing gives you the direction of where you want to go. If that's the answer to your question, and it's a journey.
Definitely.
And it's a journey.
You're right.
And one more thing, one of the early decisions Milind and I made when we got married is that suddenly the me was going to become a we.
Yeah.
And that was
teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The moment you
need to have conversation.
It's about
dialogue.
Two families coming together. In India, Christina, it's not about two individuals getting together. It's also about two families coming together. And we were very conscious of that. And today, WhatsApp family groups help. So, even today, I sent a picture of my grandfather, grandmother, and 5 children, where my father is a 2-year-old. And I sent it on our family group, and I have a niece in Singapore who said, oh, is that my grandmother there? Because her grandmother's no more. My father's the only surviving of the 8 children. And he's going to be, he's 84 years old. So for all the nieces and the nephews in-law, it's like this family photo that many of them have not seen. And then I wrote a story about my grandfather, about his values, about how he went as a chief accountant of his firm, how he went to office, his workplace, 1 hour before the office would open, and he would sit on the street on a chair and he would read the newspaper out to all the coolies who were loading and unloading. And they sat there, and he did that just for the love of giving knowledge. And what a powerful story when she tells her children, who was 6 years old and 4 years old, about her great grandfather and the kind of man he was. Stories nourish the soul.
And it makes the whole relationships inclusive. Yeah,
that's right.
It's not a photograph anymore. You're bringing it alive. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Certainly. I really truly agree with you. I really like the me and become we.
Yeah.
I think very often we forgot about that. Can you share about to us that when you get married as a couple, I'm sure nothing, because so many challenges, things are coming in. I'm sure there were times that you were quarreling, because of different thoughts, perspective. How did you all resolve when you had disagreement or quarrel?
Beautiful question. You want to say that?
See, one of the first thing when we got married, when we decided to get married, is that we decided that, even if we have a difference of opinion, we are going to sit down, have a conversation, and resolve it.
On the same day.
On the same day.
On the same day.
So no closing the day. The day doesn't end without resolution.
I know, I heard that before, but I'm more on asking is like the emotion part. Yeah. Sometimes you are so angry, and how did you cool down and calm down? You cannot even resolve on the day itself.
I will tell you. I will tell you. So there's one simple answer. He's the cool man, and I'm the short-tempered one. Okay, he has no hair left. I have a lot of hair left. So you can imagine what I did to him.
During my growing up days, I lived in a hostel which is in the wilderness. It was a beautiful place, and it was a meditative place.
He's a yogi. He's a yogi.
You learn to reflect early on in life.
So I have yes. So Milind knows that I have a good heart, but I used to have a sharp tongue. But I corrected that some years along the way when he taught me. Milind is also a Gallup certified coach, and I'm also a leadership coach. So one of the things we did, I think a big part of my journey of self. So both of us have been on this path of learning about
self-realization.
Yeah. We are both very spiritual and inclined, and we practice yoga. That's been a big part. We're both also into fitness in a big way. We've always had a game between us. We used to swim together. We played squash together. We played golf together. So
even doing these activities together will bring out the best and the worst of you, and you learn to then manage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think being respect. I think not negotiating respect. I think both of us are very, very particular about that. That you cannot, to stay on the issue, I think is very, very important, and you not not personalize it. So when you really understand that what's the intent behind why this is being said, so you understand, or what's the emotion behind what's being said. Yeah, I used to have many years now. I've really had to work on myself with my temper and anger management, but I can cool down. I can get angry in a minute, and I can cool down in a minute, right? Now, Milind was able to see past that emotion to know that there's like he always says, a golden heart behind that anger. So I think I was very fortunate that he was able to sort of cut to the chase, so they say. And that's helped us. I think it comes from a deep place of mutual respect, Christina.
Yes.
I always say that, I'm in my family of 4 of us. There are 3 introverts and there's 1 extrovert. And I often threaten saying that if I was quiet and I decided that I will not say anything, how are you guys going to manage?
Yes. I agree with you. Actually, I now understand the dynamic of both of you, the profile. Then I would love to hear from Milind, because you are the one who's taking all the shots. And so how do you actually, being so cool that there's no breaking point? Do you have ever a time where you have a breaking point?
Breaking point.
Not really.
Wow. And how did you actually do that?
So there is something called yes, no, and maybe not now. No as in not now at time. There is also something called pass. So you do not have to let everything affect you.
He's a tennis player also.
So you say pass. Go on.
Actually,
I think that's really, really fantastic.
Sports, I think, teaches you a lot, Christina. Milind has played many games in sports, so tennis, hockey. He's a good golfer, and I think one of the things
you also learn to appreciate the journey rather than a destination. Okay. At times you must learn to enjoy the journey. That's the path.
Yes, because I noticed that nowadays in the community, there's a lot of divorces arise up, and also make a lot of the youngsters afraid of going into relationship, of getting married. right? And so they would delay even like giving birth for children because they felt they are not happy when they were younger. So they say, I don't want to have relationship, I don't want to get married. But it's also a concern, like a lot of the countries, the government, especially Singapore, about
Yeah.
the birth, Yeah, so I felt that how do you encourage the youngster, which is the right age to get married, and what are the things to consider before they go into relationships?
So Christina, Milind and I were invited by Heartfulness in Kanha last year, a year and a half ago, where we did a program for 160 people who were intending to get married. And part of the participants were also those who were planning to have babies, and so there were a mix. And there were some people who were in a relationship, looking to enrich and enhance the relationship. So we brought a combination of business and life principles. Like I told you earlier, for us, life and work is all integrated, and everything is a lab. Everything needs to be put through and tested by ourselves before we can even talk about it. Because Mahatma Gandhi wrote this beautiful book. His autobiography is called My Experiments with Truth. I read that book at 17, and I believed that until I test things for myself, and we test these are for ourselves, and also to realize that there is no one size fits all, Christina. We celebrate human potential, and we know every person has infinite human potential. And we come from a space of positive psychology. We come from a space which says that if we only give the person the tools to understand themselves, they need to do that first, even before they think
Yeah.
of the other. Because the ones, it's very easy to blame. It's very easy to have misplaced expectations, which lead to misunderstandings and differences. How is it that you learn to dialogue?
And the beautiful part is, in the context of elder and elder care, they bring stability to your decision making. And that is what is something that can really make a difference in societies, even like Singapore. Yeah, or in
Yes, you are
China,
right.
where we see, or when in Italy, where we have secluded elder cares at times. When there is an
Yes.
integrated approach, when one finds a lot of stability in the younger generation to be able to have the courage to go through the relationship journey.
And allowing them to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Who doesn't make mistakes? It's allowing. So both our kids, we've allowed them to make their life choices, and they don't have to copy our life. What they can do is, they are observing in any case. We just have to be. The children will learn. We don't have to tell them I
Yeah.
did this or compare, because every generation is so different. The
And
stimuli is different, the context is
yeah,
different.
and the child is like a sponge, they keep absorbing what they see around.
And everybody brings their own value.
Yeah.
So the moment we recognize that and appreciate and we celebrate the individual,
It just works.
you're sending the right message. You are
Absolutely.
actually building a place where there's a lot more harmony and peace, with people are where they are
Yeah.
content. They are not comparing,
Right.
or they are not feeling less. They know that I am enough, I'm
And
fine.
then it doesn't seem very difficult, because you don't have to teach anybody anything. You just have to do what you think is right. And
Yes.
then you're not worried about how do I bring up children in this world. Yeah.
Totally. I agree with you. I really love that, being content, not compare with
Yeah.
each other and all the same. Yes. Just last questions that I have. Like for those family or children or people, they have no elderly as an example or role model. What would you suggest for them to, like, because you say connecting with the elderly gives stability, and because of the stories they have, and I truly agree with you. So what can they do if they don't have this kind of elderly as an example? How do they able to connect to have that stability for themselves?
So in my sister's complex where they live right now, there is a lockdown, because there is about 600 people living in that high-rise community. And what they have done, there are many elders living alone, or they are living just the couple living. So the fact that these elders have got integrated, and people are getting their food, there's someone taking care. So they have, each family has
Yeah,
adopted some
yeah.
families to take care of. And so they take responsibility for medication. So just the way what we were talking about, Christina, is really to say that you just only have to look around and say, oh, I don't think they have anybody visiting, or it's Christmas. So what we do is for Mother's Day, had a bigger cake and we've called all the mothers, older ladies from the community, and it doesn't matter.
So it's about inclusion.
Yes, totally. I agree with you. Making that intentional, conscious decision.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It is intention. That's the other eye. Christina, thank you.
We are going to add one eye now.
You've given us one eye to our paradigm.
It's what you shared with me, and I thought that, yeah, actually intentional is also another eye.
Yes.
I agree with you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the people out here regarding with wellness, and anything in your mind before we close the session for today?
Yes, I do want to say one thing. Definitely that we have huge respect for what Heartfulness Wellness is doing.
And the philosophy of Heartfulness.
Yeah. And truly, it is really about that fullness that will overflow, which will actually lead to a lot of... See, today we know there is a mind-body connection that has been proven, right? And communities like these, where people get a chance, it's like an oasis where you come in, you reconnect, you sustain yourself, you replenish yourself, and you go back to do your life work. And we must all have that faith in some place, in something that we deem is higher. We must have a purpose that is bigger than making money. We must have a purpose, a vision which is larger. We must have a definition of family which is beyond the 3, 4, 5 people in our life, which is again Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where the whole world is my family. And truly the world will shrink. I truly believe so. We believe so.
Yeah.
Me too. I believe so as well. What about Milind? Anything to add before we end this?
No, I just add that I love the whole philosophy of Heartfulness, where it says from the heart, by the heart, and for the heart. Lovely. It has been a pleasure speaking with you, Christina.
Same here. Thank you so much. And thank you for the session that we have today with both of them. And I hope that all of us will get some good takeaways. And thank you for being with us in this journey on the wellness, Heartfulness Wellness. And we have more webinars coming up for all of you. Check out the links below. And that's all for today. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.